They don't have to see me. Okay. Thank you everyone for rejoining us. We'll begin this section with Reverend Dr. Kenji Akahoshi. For those of you who don't know, he began as my dentist. That's when I first met him. Really? Yep. But he's always been into the spiritual, so he got his master's in transpersonal psychology and an IBS. And he recently retired as the minister of the San Diego Buddhist temple. And now he's back in San Jose. So we're very lucky to have him here again. His parents, as I mentioned, were very good to me when I was a minister in San Jose. That Joe and Grace that's where I would go if I couldn't go home for the holidays. So I'm very glad he's able to come and speak for us today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Please join me in Nembutsu Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Well, I appreciate being given the opportunity to share the Nembutsu and my ideas of Shinjin. I'd like to put a context in this because you may find that I'll be speaking at somewhat of a different level. And what I'm saying here is that my intent has always been to bring an introductory level to Shin Buddhism, because I find that there are kind of difficulties in trying to understand these deep concepts. And so I'm using a contemporary, modern approach to what we know and accept as true, and then to relate our Buddhist words and concepts to that. And so what I'm actually modeling this under is the lives of our Issei and Nisei parents and grandparents. And I'm old enough to know some of these older people. And what I found was that they demonstrated a life of Nembutsu. Many of them could not really explain any of the doctrine that we learned in Dharma school. And yet there was a certain quality and value that they held. And it was through the culture of Japan, which I think was heavily influenced by Buddhism, especially Shin Buddhism. So that is what I'm kind of basing this on. And Dr. Lisa Grombach, who taught here at IBS, she's now at Yukoku with her husband, Dr. Nasu, gave a class, and once she mentioned that there are anthropological studies that show that the people at that time did not practice the same type of Buddhism that was in the doctrine. And to get a sense of what that might be, think about scholars 100 years from now reading our doctrine. Will they be understanding how we everyday Buddhists might live? There's a difference. And so that's what I'm looking at, how we might live as perhaps our Issei and Nisei parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents may have lived, using the principles of Shin Buddhism and bringing this idea of Shinjin into our daily life. And initially, my intention is that Shinnan's message was for the mass majority of people. And I'm trying to read this in also with what Reverend Kurohara was saying, and that I don't think our goal as common people are as sophisticated as becoming Buddhists. And I know for myself, I'm not trying to be enlightened. That was the Buddha's objective and goal which he attained. That's a pretty high standard. And for me, to be awake is a big deal. And I think that Shinran wrote his chapter 6, and those of you who know something about the Kyogyo Shincho, chapter 5 is about true Buddha and Pure Land. Chapter 6 was written for me and people like me, and that's provisional. That's saying, well, if you don't make it at the 18, we've got, another level. And so what I'm looking at and what I talk about is an incremental experience of Shin Buddhism. And so the things I'll be saying is not contradictory to doctrine, but it's just at a different level, an introductory level. So that's kind of the context I want to start with. Now, I'll start with the metaphor in that truth is a big thing, and often the ocean is given as a demonstration of what we're talking about. And we might think that we're in a submarine and we have one porthole in the front and we're looking out and we say, oh, I know truth. We just have this one view. It's very limited because we're in this ocean of truth. And yet, we're spouting off, oh, I know what this is. I had this experience or I've read this. But we just have this one porthole. And so it's very limited. And what we're trying to determine is that how do we live our lives aligned with this truth? Because in the past, when things were happening, I'm talking historically, often things of the unknown were attributed to gods and explained through mythology. And so earthquakes or, storms, even events that happen to us humans were explained because of gods and why and how we lived. And there's some guru that came down representing a deity and said, I know, and this is what you should do because I have this connection with this deity, and if you follow what I say, things will work out. Siddhartha Gautama was in a way a little different, because when he sought truth to these issues of sickness, old age, and death, he didn't really just go and attribute it to a god. He thought, how does the world work? And so he looked into the things at that time of through his own introspection, his intuition, noetic sense, his observation on how the world worked. And he saw things and realized that if we align our lives with what we can see is true, then things work out. The Zen have a saying of ride the horse in the direction it's running. And of course, if you don't align yourself with these truths, then we suffer. We have a problem. And so, this is what I think is perhaps a contemporary way of looking at Buddhism, an awakening process of the mind to align with truth. When I say mind, often in Western thought, mind is just cognitive, the brain. But in Eastern thought, when you read mind, what the Buddha, or we talk sometimes about the Buddha's mind, that means the mind, the body, feeling, spirit, all these things combined. It's an experience. So aligning, our whole body persona with truth is, what's helpful. Now, again, with this metaphor, we're in this submarine, and if you're of my age, you're probably in a yellow submarine. But at the time of the Buddha, if you wanted to know truth, you had to, renounce ordinary life. And you didn't have any of the responsibilities of providing a meal, your upkeep. You had a robe, a begging bowl, maybe a sleeping mat. And so you had all this time to actually delve into truth. But things were different for common people. Farmers, fishermen, involved killing fish or animals and providing for the family and so forth. Very difficult to put your mind to, take an hour a day to meditate or do all these things. And so Shinjin, who was a monk for 20 years, admitted because of his integrity that he really was not able to get to this depth. And so he admitted because of his integrity and honesty that he couldn't do it. And of course, we know that because of the situation of the time, he was defrocked and had to live with common people. And as such, you just kind of wondered, I think, all these people working hard, how are they going to, realize life? And going back to the sutras, he discovered some things, and of course, in writing his masterwork Kyogyo Shinsho in chapter 2 on practice, he writes this, and he saw things differently. Because for monks and for some people, there's a issue of trying to diminish the ego. Modern psychology, Dr. Carmela will tell you, it's impossible to eliminate your ego with your ego. And so what we find is that Shinran says this: still the clouds and mists of greed, desire, anger, and hatred cover as always the sky of true and real Shinjin. But though the light of the sun is veiled by clouds and mist, beneath the clouds and mist, there is brightness, not dark. Now, isn't that very optimistic? We're not getting rid of the ego, it's there, it's covering, the bright sun. But it remains there, but he notes that beneath it, there's brightness. Now, he goes on to say this: when one realizes Shinjin, or I'm just using awakening right now, seeing and revering and attaining great joy, one immediately leaps crosswise, closing off the 5 grave courses. Now, what's he mean by a crosswise leap? If you all put your hand up and hide my face, even though it's on Zoom, just hide my face. Now, if I were to make a crosswise leap, what do you see? You get to see me again. So I think what he means by this, and this is what I get from it, is that we have a change of perspective. We just shift. And we have Saichi who says, "Oh, Saichi, where's the land of bliss? My land of bliss is right here. Where is the line of division between this world and the land of bliss? The eyes are the line of division." So I think he's also saying it's just a shift. We have the same world, we have the Soshin, but by changing our view, we have a completely different perspective. And so I think for us Shin Buddhists, we're in the submarine and we've been looking out in front thinking, what can I achieve to be one with everything, to know everything? And I think as Shin Buddhists, we have a porthole in the back of the submarine. And we're saying, how did we get here? And so the message for Shin Buddhists, I think, is that we are in a constant reality of receiving. We have been receiving and we are receiving everything. And we'll get to that because that is what I think is a basis of, what we could say is Shin. In that, okay. In Kyogyo Shinsho, in his preface, Shinran says this: if you should come to realize this practice in Shinjin, rejoice at the conditions from the distant past that has brought it about. I am especially aware of the profundity of Tathagata's benevolence. Here I rejoice in what I have heard and extol what I have received. And that last word, received, I have actually taken from the Ryukoku interpretation of this preface. But what I think Shinran is saying is, realize and practice Shinjin, brought about by the Buddha's benevolence, and rejoice on what I have heard and received. And we continue to hear that word hear and heard, but it's all about receiving. And perhaps we've been looking out this porthole, wondering what we should do when looking out that back porthole. We realize, what have we received? So, the next thing it says a little further down in Kyogyo Shinsho is, one is naturally brought to a stage of definitely settled, solely saying the Tathagata's name constantly, one should respond with gratitude to the universal vow of great compassion. Now, I think most of us here know that saying the Nembutsu is what it's about. But for new people, and often people in our services where we constantly say Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, and some of the new people have trouble pronouncing it, and the way it's written, Namo Amida Butsu, or Namo Amida Butsu, or just Namandam. We can say it, but what is our experience of it? If I say abracadabra, what happens? If nothing happens, it doesn't have much value. Or I'll just say Namo Amida Butsu. If nothing happens, it doesn't have much value. But here, Shinran is saying, say the Buddha's name with gratitude. And so I think I've been using the word thank you as an introductory method of becoming accustomed to this whole mentality of receiving, acknowledging what we've received. And I know thank you is in, I think, all cultures, and it's said many different ways, but we don't have to really explain it. It acknowledges that we've received something, that you're aware that we have received something. So those of you who have heard some of my talks know that I've been talking about this for some time. And so I'm going through a few slides just to go over this. But it's using thank you, and I use the demonstration of the Karate Kid. This kid, Daniel, wants to be a karate master. He goes to Miyagi Sensei and wants to learn. And first thing he's taught is, okay, wax the car, and he's going to do this motion. Let's see, maybe I should get out of here. Okay, he does this motion of just round and round. And then he says, well, paint a fence, and so he's got to go up and down. And Daniel's getting a little upset because he wants to learn karate. But he realizes later that these arm motions, circular motions and vertical motions, are fundamental to karate. And that's how I see thank you. It's not Nembutsu, but it's part of it. And it's something we're familiar with. And it's incremental practice of learning how to do something, or what the meaning of something is. And so, looking at that, thank you, I think, is a response to receiving, and it's the uniqueness of Shin practice of receiving and not achieving. Now, we hear a lot about practice. I talk about we need a practice, and this is what I think the Buddha talked about. When we talk about the mind representing mind, body, feeling, spirit, it's all parts of us. And so Buddhist schools are often noted by their practice. And our practice is in acknowledging what we are receiving. So our practice is not to achieve anything, it is to acknowledge what we are receiving. And we often hear hearing, listening to the Dharma. This is receiving. So gratitude, I think, is the initial practice for ordinary people. In Japan, arigatai is just the known value. Everything is arigatai. We're grateful for just everything. And so it brings the Buddhist teaching, this gratitude, this thank you, it brings the teachings into ordinary life. And so Shin Buddhism is about appreciating what I have to balance the desire for what I don't have. The clouds of desire are still there. We're not eliminating them. And as Shin Buddhists, as ordinary people, I don't think we're trying to get to nirvana and wipe everything else out. It's a balance. It's a continual balance. And so I talk about it as a shift from please, which we're all familiar with, a desire for what I want. That remains. And it's a shift to thank you, to appreciate what I've already received. Now, what is it that we've received? It's a common practice for us to acknowledge our meals, before meals saying itadakimasu. That's a common thing. And what is it that often we say it very quickly, but then we're acknowledging the sacrifices and efforts that people have made, animals and vegetables have made. We're thinking about the farmer, but also we're thinking about all the other things that have gone into this. How did this farmer raise this from seeds? And it took sunlight, irrigation, all of these things. How did it get to the market? Through trucks or trains, which other humans had to invent and produce. And it got to the market, and then there are people who had to package it and present it to us so that we could go out and just buy these things. And then who prepared it? My wife prepares a lot of this, but then it's prepared for us. So our itadakimasu, what we're really honoring and respecting, not only this meal, but the whole chain of events, all the things that have gone into preparing this meal for me. And all I have to do is, oh yeah, I paid for it, oh, this thing costs $15, it used to cost $10, but it's there. And we have access to foods that the historical Buddha as a prince did not have. I was just in Japan, and you could go to the basement of any department store and buy a host of things. And here we go to the market and, buy foods from all over the world. And so that's one example. The other example I often give is a practice of saying thank you for ordinary things. And by that I mean, in the morning you might just think about what is it that I might be grateful for today? And the first thing you might think of is, oh, a light switch. So I use the Eightfold Path in reverse order. Meditation, just thinking quietly, oh, keeping in mind, oh, a light switch. And then my livelihood as I go into the day, conduct. As I encounter a light switch, I turn it on. And what do I say? Thank you. And that brings a thought into my mind of gratitude and the thought of what enabled that light to be there. An electrician, a light bulb, but then someone put the electricity in there, the city, Edison to invent these things. Anyone who's been camping can really appreciate a light switch and also a shower when you come back. Another day you might think about water, turning on a water faucet. And so all these conveniences and necessities are there because the whole universe of people, things, invention has caused these things to be there for my use. So that's a daily practice of recognizing what we are receiving. So what I'm saying here is that our practice we've been looking out the wrong porthole. We've been looking out the front thinking, what do I have to achieve? As Shin Buddhists, I think we look out the back porthole and say, how did we get here? All these things have contributed to my being here. Now, most important, as we look out, how did we get here? And I could say as individuals. You might say you drove or you took the train or bus or flew here. But, I think all of us have reached some position in life and we might be proud that we got here. I was proud that I was a dentist for a while. And I was proud that I was accepted into UCSF. And I thought I did it all myself because I sacrificed a lot in high school. Didn't fool around that much. And in college I studied and I felt I gave up a lot. I was at UCSF during the summer of love, and I was inside trying to get out of dental school, doing my homework and studies, and I could have been out there, with the Grateful Dead and everyone else. I didn't realize history was going on outside. But anyway, so I was so proud. And yet later, as an adult, I look back and realized that it was my parents who supported me, the first 20, 25 years of my life. And my father working at least 7 days a week right after camp when before the war, he had a green grocery that he lost and came back and worked as a clerk for someone else. My mother, I had to think about this. She went from a part-time job at a Japanese store in Japantown to a children's clothing store to work full-time. And that hardly crossed my mind at the time. But all these things contributed. Now the school, there were instructors that gave up a day of dentistry to become a teacher. and the professors. Now, how did that school get there? Some people had to decide to have a school. There were philanthropists who helped, with the finances of establishing the school. So again, this whole system of people doing things for my benefit. In a sense, I think that's what Shinran felt when he says, the vow is for me alone. All these things. And so I'd like each of us to think about how we got to the positions we're at. Yes, we studied, we worked hard, but I think we realized that, let's see, wow, this is a slide before about thanking, but I think we realized that the efforts of others, all these things contributed to us being where we are. And that it is this whole thing of realizing that instead of us having to do something, we have been receiving. And I think what Shinran is telling us is wake up to the light that shines beneath the clouds. Now, the other thing is, what are we really grateful for? I think one of the most critical things is that what we may take for granted most often is our human birth. Now, how do we become humans? Again, in modern life, we kind of understand that there's evolution and that we come from animals. There's this evolutionary process from, let's say, ocean life, water life, to amphibians, to reptiles, and, creatures, finally mammals, primates, and then humans. Well, something happened along the way, and I think it's about 30 or 40,000 years ago, they found evidence of flowers being planted or put in places where people have died. No other animal has done that. In other words, we were conscious that people died and went somewhere. This was consciousness, and this is a attribute that we humans have that others do not, other animals do not. And so it is this ability to be awake. The Buddha was not a god. He said, I am awake. And so it is this consciousness that realizes, yes, we've been born, we've gotten all this, we live like other animals, we live to eat, we avoid being eaten, although we don't have to worry too much about that now. We fight for our territory, we procreate. We have all these things, and yet we have this ability to really think about how we got here. And this whole thing is, how did we get here? So what we're saying thank you for, what this Nembutsu, thank you, is about, is much more than just the conveniences and necessities of life. It's about human birth with this ability of consciousness. And to point it out, I'll have two things. I want to repeat a poem by Mitsuo Aida. And his poem goes like this. And it talks about, how we got here. My father and mother, altogether 2. Parents of my father and mother, altogether 4. Parents of parents, altogether 8. If I count in this way back 10 generations, altogether 1,024. What about back 20 generations? To my surprise, over 1 million people. From the infinite past, a life rally baton has passed down. Here, now I live with my baton. This is my life, this is your life. And so, thinking back, 20 generations is about 500 years, going back to Renyo's time. What about 30 generations? That's about 800 years, going back to Shinran's time. The math told me that it took 1 billion people in perfect matches to create me, and to create each one of us. 1 billion people, that's 1/8 of the world's population right now. And that's just math. This is what we're waking up to. Now there's another statistic, again, this is not belief. In biology, I understand it takes 10 million sperm to make one impregnation, make one person. 10 million. And that sperm has to travel a distance that might be equivalent to a marathon. So each of us had a sperm that traveled the distance of a marathon and beat out 10 million other sperm to hit that egg to become us. Now, what happens to that second sperm, that microsecond later? Nothing, right? That is our failed twin. That failed twin came a microsecond later and never enjoyed human life. And here we are thinking, taxes are too high. Oh, geez, I got to do this. That other failed twin, if there were another egg, we would have a twin. But that failed twin never has the opportunity to have all the things we can experience. And so we hear these words, but I think we need to realize that this is not belief, it's math. It took 1 billion perfect pairings, it took 10 million others that we beat to become each one of us. And it's almost impossible to be born a human being. We talk about the lotto. Again, we're looking out that front porthole, when in fact, looking out the back porthole, we realize this statistically, we're here. And what do we say at most services? 3 treasures. Hard, rare, difficult, and wondrous is it to be born into human life. Now we hear, now we live it. Rare, difficult, and wondrous is it to hear the teachings of the Buddha. Now we hear it. If we do not resolve this now, when will we do it? And what we're resolving is waking up, appreciating the fact that we somehow, with all the statistical numbers, have reached human life with the ability to appreciate it. And I think that's where Shinjin comes in. Now, what is this life about? Okay, at the time of the Buddha, he described everything that he knew at the time. Everything changes, impermanence. And also, everything is interconnected, right? So we hear this all the time. I just want to kind of go into a little more detail like we do in many things. We knew that the atom, when I was young, I was told at one time that the atom was the smallest unit of mass. Well, now we know it's not. There's quarks and subatomic particles. So looking at this impermanence, everything changes, and so the only time that's real is right now. Interdependence, everything is connected. Now in our modern science, we know with climate change and all these things, the plastic we use in our bottles ends up in the Pacific Ocean and ends up in the tuna that we ate as sushi. So we know this, but there is a somewhat more modern concept, and that's by Einstein. And he talked about mass and energy. All things in the world has mass and energy. What he means is that it's the energy that makes change. This impermanence is what? Energy that changes mass. And I'll just say it here, I'll be repeating this, but I want to equate mass with body. We're of this planet. So what do we call mass, or body? I don't think anyone wants to think of our bodies as being mass, but yeah, that's what we are. What do we call our energy? We call it spirit. And that's a word that, again, words are a little deceptive because we have ideas of what spirit means. And so I'm not sure what to call it, whatever is convenient for you. It could be energy spirit. But we get the sense that the body, the ego, is impermanent. And yet the spirit, this energy that changes body, is interdependent. It flows through everything. Now, to make this a little more understandable, a tree, if we burn a limb, what do we have? Heat and light. So mass is converted to heat and energy, light. Now, how did that happen? Because as a seed, that seed, tiny seed, took in light, water, air, carbon dioxide, nutrients, and grew to a little sapling. And then it grew to a bigger tree. And that limb that's burned is just releasing all this energy, spirit, that was taken in as it grew. The same thing happens to us as we grow. We're, body, and we grow because of all the, things our parents did for us. Not only them, but our teachers, not only did it change our body, but we also got information, education. Now, I'm calling the spirit side also what we do as I talk. I think this is spirit. As we exchange ideas, it's not mass. How does mass interact with each other? Through spirit. So spirit is not something weird. To me, it's scientific. Looking at it from a modern point of view, if Einstein is right, and for now it's maybe 100 years from now they'll correct this, but things have mass and energy. And the Buddha talked about this, that if we pay a lot of attention to mass, our bodies, and we get attached, we want, more greed, and we don't like the other guy having as much hatred, we're just plain ignorance. This emphasis on the body leads to discontent, suffering, dis-ease. But if we emphasize that other part, the spiritual part, the interdependence, the thing that connects us with others, love, ideas, our relationships, wisdom, compassion, that spiritual side, life energy. This is what I think religions are about. And the Buddha looked at this from his point of view, and now with our modern point of view, we can see hopefully more clearly that what he's talking about is true. That it's this interdependent, this energy, the spiritual side that we need to nurture. So I'll repeat what Shin said earlier. One is naturally brought to enter a stage of definitely settled. Solely saying the Tathagata's name constantly, one should respond with gratitude to the universal vow of great compassion. So, what does it mean to say the Buddha's name again with gratitude? Amida, Namo Amida Butsu. Amida, we know, is the Japanese word that combines Amitabha, infinite light, with Amitayus, compassion, or limitless life. So Namo could mean I am one with, or I take refuge in, an awakening of light and life, all known elements. And so I think what we're expressing is an appreciation or gratitude for ordinary life. And, what does it mean that we're one with light and life? It just means that we become aware that we're born as a human being, a mathematically impossible thing, but each of us is here. And what will we spend our time on? Buying more goodies, buying more toys? Or do we join in many temples? And what do temples do? Serves others. A woman asked me about Shin Buddhism and why we have these activities for children. Dharma schools, aren't we helping children? And YDA, and we have all these other things. And I like to say that in Shin Buddhism, we have our rituals that happen in the service, but it's downstairs when we go into the hospitality room and we interchange with our, spirit energy. So it is about this, just living a human life, or ordinary life. And so, again, says, Shinran says, if you should come to the realization that this practice in Shinjin, rejoice at the conditions from the distant past that have brought it about. And so I think what he's saying is realize that we are receiving these things, and because of that, we appreciate it, and the next thing we do is serve others, not for merit, not for recognition, but because we realize we've already received these things. And we could call that the compassion of Amida, we could say the efforts of others. But we are receiving these things. And so this Namo Amida Butsu is a constant reminder that I have this precious, rare life for, at most 100 years. And others cannot have this. The other 10 million sperm that didn't make it, 9,999,000. Anyway, we beat out so much. 1 billion connections from the last 800 years made my being here a reality. Not a belief, just, again, math. And this is what I'm appreciating, and this is what Namo Amida Butsu, it's really accepting the joy of life. And so, to me, Shinjin is, we don't have to think whether we have faith or not. It is just in accepting the reality that we have human life, and Jodo Shinshu, Shin Buddhism, is a process of making me aware of that and appreciating that. And with that, with this bodhisattva ideal, what can I do to help others realize that? Now, I know there are many, not contradictions, but adversities to this. But this is, I think, a basic truth, that it is this, value of life that we have. And many people, start out in life in very disadvantaged conditions, and, there are issues around. But I think for all of us, it is this fact that we were born a human being. And so I see Shinjin as affirming that we are part of light and life, that it's just the natural, ordinary, everyday kinds of things. And again, this is how I saw Issei and Nisei living their lives, not being overly spiritual or good, but just enjoying life. And when it came time for that transition, they let go. And this is where, again, our rituals really emphasize this connection. What are we known for in Shin Buddhism? Why do we have all these memorial services? Are we concentrating on death? No, we're affirming that life continues, this spirit energy. That every month we have a shotsuki, honoring those who passed away in the month of May. Obon, every year we talk about, and we talk about ancestors. I like to think of them more like our parents or grandparents, people close to us. But it did take, 1 billion ancestors to get here. Why do we bring flowers to the cemetery or Nokutsudo? Why is that a thing? It's to remind us that we're connected. Why do we talk to people who have passed on? We're not crazy just talking to the air. There's that connection. And the rituals in Shin Buddhism affirm that. And we have these constant rituals that say, we're connected. That body, the impermanent part, may be gone, but that spiritual part is here. So I think our lives are about enhancing the spiritual part. And how we do that is up to each one of us. But to know, actually through, let's say, modern science, through Einstein's theory, that we have mass, a body, and we have energy, spirit. And where do we put our emphasis? I think naturally we're trying to look good and buy products that make me young, eat vitamins and so forth. But then there's that spiritual part that many people discount as being, kind of elusive. But that is what got us here, and that is what will connect us, in the future. So, again, let's see if okay. So what I want to say is that I think what we're doing is celebrating. There's a song, "It's a Wonderful World," Louis Armstrong, and where he talks about the beauty of these little life things. So I think anytime we see, a baby or a child, or we get together with relatives or friends, that is what, spiritual life is about. And it's just saying Naman Dabs, which some of the older parents and grandparents were doing. Initially we say thank you. Eventually we will find that we say Naman Dabs, and that Naman Dabs really has meaning to it, because we have that sense of appreciation. And again, as Shin said, it is beyond any explanation, but it is an experience of deep, deep gratitude. So I'll just slowly recap that I think a modern version of talking about Buddhism is a process of awakening and aligning our mind with truth, and that rather than looking out the front porthole, we look at the back porthole and realize everything that's been done for us, and shifting our thoughts from please, I want more, to thank you, really appreciating what we have, especially human birth, and this fact that Shinjin is acknowledging that we become aware of it. I mean, we're alive, we feel it, everyone knows that. But when we become aware of that, that to me is Shinjin, that this awareness and appreciation that we have this rare thing. And that with this acknowledgement and awareness, we serve others. And we are in this process of the Bodhisattva, of serving others, of interdependence, just being one with all. And so we're reminded of that continually as we recite the Nembutsu. So please join me in our appreciation for all that has been done for us, and especially human life itself. Gasho, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. This last slide, that's what it's about, is enjoying life, but being aware of it. Not just enjoying the wine, but so thank you.
We'll take a short break here, 10 minutes, and then while we set up